This one's for the people that are currently tenants, but also for owners too. If you're a tenant, are you worried that your lease that you currently have may not be extended? It may be rejected. You may be asked to leave. Well, I'm going to give you some things that happen in the background that you may not be aware of, which will either help you or which will hinder you when that time comes. So let's go. So just bear in mind that I'm not saying your rent won't go up, because we're in a market where rents are going up. Conversely, a few years ago, we were in a market where rents were going down or not being increased. So as much as you may not like rent going up, no tenant complained when the rent stayed the same for 2 or 3 or 4 years or didn't go down. So it's a two-way street. That's the first thing you have to understand. So here are the tangibles you're probably aware of as a tenant. Number 1, paying your rent on time, obviously important. Number 2, reporting legitimate maintenance issues. So if something's wrong and it's legitimate, let the property manager know about it so we can get on top of it quickly and get it rectified so it doesn't turn into a bigger issue. And that, 1 and 2, that's pretty much it. That's how you can become a good tenant. Pay your rent on time. Anything breaks that's legitimate, let us know about it so we can take care of it. So now we're going to talk about the things that are tangibles that you may not be aware of. Number 1, you are consistently late by 1 or 2 days every time you pay your rent. Not enough to be breached, which is 7 days, that's an official breach, but enough that you create a lot of work for the property manager because they've got to send out a message saying, hey, you're late, where's your rent? And they've got to deal with that all the time. If you're one of those tenants, that will work against you when it comes time to renew your lease. Now let me back up a fraction there. If it's a legitimate reason why you're late occasionally, and I'm talking once or twice a year, let the property manager know ahead of time if you can, and that will negate all the issues. Again, communication here does become an issue. Next thing that works against you, number 2, I think, is reporting maintenance issues all the time, which really are not maintenance issue. Like we had a light bulb go out. Well, as a tenant, you replace the light bulbs. Or the back door slammed shut and it broke one of the little window panes. Well, that's your responsibility as a tenant. The tenants that cause a lot of work for our property managers are ones that are reporting little things all the time. We often get people from Victoria coming up here and immediately move into the house and report ants. Ants are not a maintenance issue. A function of the environment in Queensland is we have ants and we have cockroaches. I have a clean house, we have cockroaches. I do the bombs every few months, it pretty much controls them. So things like that really starts to add up to the property manager's work, and that will negatively impact you when it comes time to renew that lease. This next one happens, I don't want to say regularly, but it does happen. You report an emergency and you call the emergency number, and we get an emergency electrician out here and he goes out there and said, the circuit breaker's popped, you just have to do that. That's not an emergency call out. As a tenant, you have a certain level of responsibility also. If the power goes off, check the circuit breaker box. If you flick it on, power's good, not an issue. That happens everywhere sometimes. Now, if you flick it on and bam, it goes off immediately, maybe try and isolate a little bit, unplug a few things and see if that helps. If it doesn't, yeah, emergency, call your property manager. But you do not want to be calling out emergencies all the time that are not emergencies and then calling our office and trying to argue with us saying, well, the light bulb that went out was an emergency because I couldn't see in the hallway. No, not emergency, and you'll have to pick up the bill for that, which will make you unhappy, which makes us unhappy because then we've got to explain that to the owner. Makes it harder to renew your lease. Number next, 3 or 4, I've lost track. You're bad on communication. In other words, we send you emails, you don't respond. We leave you messages, you don't respond. Then eventually we leave a harsh email and a harsh message. You finally get it, calls back, and you say something to the effect of, oh, I never check my emails. You can't get away with that anymore. Not in 2021, maybe in 1980, you may have been able to say that at the very start of the internet, but not checking your email is kind of like not checking the mailbox in front of your house now. You just can't do that, and that cannot be an excuse for you not getting a notice for something to do with your property. Or if you were late and we call and email you and then you say, well, you never even called me, and we say, yes, we did, but you never answered, and you say, well, I never checked my messages, it's on you. Next one, and we catch people on this, again, not super regularly, but enough for it to be in my mind. You try and sublet the property. You try and Airbnb out a bedroom. Let me tell you right now, our property managers are checking Facebook, Craigslist, Airbnb stays. We're checking everything on a regular cycle, I suppose, of properties we suspect. If I drive by a property and I see 5 cars out the front, I'm going to be, what's going on there? And I have the property managers check it. So tenants that try and sublet or lease out a bedroom or Airbnb a bedroom, you can pretty much be guaranteed you will not be offered a new lease. This is a pet peeve of mine because I'm an animal lover. I love animals, period, across the board. I can't even harm spiders anymore. I've gotten to that point in my life. Unauthorized pets. So we do an inspection of the house and we see a kitty litter box hidden in one of the cupboards. And we're like, oh, what's that doing there? Then we call you on it and you say, oh yeah, I got a cat. Did I forget to tell you? And we're like, well, yeah, you forgot to tell us. And now we've got to go to the owner and say the tenant now has a cat and is requesting permission to have a cat. If the owner says no, what do you do with that cat? It makes us feel bad too. It puts us in a horrible, horrible position. So I will not answer that. So if you do that, that's just a big no-no. Now, if you have kids and they want a dog, call us, communicate to us, let us talk to the owner, and a lot of times we will get permission for that, for an animal, maybe a cat or a dog. But if you do it and then try and come backwards on us or you hide it, guaranteed that lease, you're not going to be seeing it. Next one's a pet peeve of mine. I know this is dragging on a bit, so if you've stuck with me, great. If you haven't, then it didn't matter what I just said. Abusive behavior. I'm okay with someone getting upset. I'm okay with someone putting forward their point. I am not okay with someone being aggressive to my property managers on the phone. I'm not okay with them verbally threatening. I'm not okay with them saying, if you don't return my call in 1 hour, I'm coming down the office. If you are that sort of person and you've done that and your lease does not get renewed and you can't figure it out, I don't know what to tell you. Next one, and it sounded like I was angry on the last one. I kind of was because I don't like that behavior. I don't like bullying behavior. I'm okay with arguments and all that. I'm not okay with that type of behavior just because you might be a big guy that can get away with that. You don't get away with it in the long run. Next one. This doesn't happen often, but when it does, it's a big red flag. Somehow, as a tenant, you've gotten the owner's telephone number, and he might have given it to you kind of accidentally off the cuff over something, and then we have an issue between the property manager and the tenant, and you call the owner and you tell us. And then the owner calls us to say, oh, did this and this happen the way the tenant said? And we go, oh no, the tenant missed out all these parts in between. If you do that, you are almost guaranteed not to see a renewal. So that's pretty much it. Now, let me make this clear too. Some of you people that are tenants that may be seeing this, your property manager may not be nice. They may not have a lot of personality. That does happen. That still doesn't give you the right to do any of the things I've talked about, which are the wrong things. You've just got to kind of work with that, and that's part of life, I suppose, learning to adapt to what people are. So I'm not saying every property manager is nice and does the right thing, but in this market, where rentals are really hard to not only get, but to be offered a new lease, you got to play the game a little bit. So that's it. So hopefully some owners listen to that also, so you know what goes on from our side of the desk sometimes. So if you are an owner watching this and you want us to manage your property, we do a great job. If you're an owner that wants to sell your property, now is the time. And if you're a buyer looking for property, it's okay to give me a call and tell me what you want, and we'll try and help you as much as we can. That's it. See you all next week.